Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about picking fights. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, as a tech lead, is it important to you to choose your fights? To pick and choose your fights? I would say that that's important for any human. But sure, we can make it about tech leads. I would say this. It is important for you to pick and choose your fights in the sense that you have to understand what is going to matter at the end of the day. That's the number one thing. And what I mean by that is very simply that don't start an argument over something that doesn't matter. It's pointless. It's always going to be pointless, in my opinion, because there's no net benefit to having that fight. You're just going to tire yourself out, and in many cases you're going to figure out that it's really just about your emotional state that you're having this fight. So an example of that would be someone wants to work in a more functional way versus a more object-oriented way, or someone wants to use single quotes versus double quotes. That's like a very extreme example, but like you have someone in your you have a disagreement on how you want to do things. And a classic one is that I'm one of those, I don't like having a lot of libraries, for example, in my code, because the more dependencies you have, the more issues you usually have with them. And so I always make an argument for, if you don't need to pull in like a library to do something very little and arbitrary, it takes like a few minutes to write it yourself, don't do it. Some people feel differently, and I've had many of these sorts of arguments where I say I don't think that this is a good idea. But I also know that the say in specific, a concrete example was some dude I was working with was refactoring the status codes for the backend responses for a server, and so he pulled in a library to basically represent the number 200 and 404 instead of just hard coding those two numbers, where the argument was, all right, yeah, but I don't like magic numbers, and now we have all these other status codes. And I go, yeah, but like we don't actually have a use case for any of this. You could write your own enum right now. Like you could, it takes you, like it would take you, it would be faster for you to create the enum with those status codes than it will go faster than us talking, instead of creating a library that includes like all this other stuff that we might not need, right? And this is where philosophy, ideological understanding starts coming in. And he says, yeah, but why should we reinvent the wheel? And I go, yeah, why should we reinvent the wheel? And I mean, I don't really have a good counter to that. It's because my definition, like for me, this, like the thing that he just pulled out is literally, yeah, you're going to do something fairly complicated. You're going to spend a lot of time on it. This is literally like 2 seconds of work. And so we debated it back and forth, and I realized that he's not going to budge on this. All right, do the thing that I do the thing that I usually do. Pull in a third opinion, like a person who decides. And this is me being the tech lead, by the by. So I technically could pull rank if I wanted to. And I say, all right, pull in another coworker. How do you feel about it? Let's vote on it. And the other guy goes, yeah, I understand your point, Frederick, but at the same time, I think this is it's a benign situation. I go, fine. It's not gonna, then let's go with it. And then we moved on, because this is not a fight that I need to win, just so that I can be right, because it's not gonna really change much. The impact of it is fairly benign. On the other hand, then there are fights there where I have to, as the tech lead, have an opinion on it if I want the system to work. And this is the thing that determines, I think, a lot between this is the way the character of different people shows itself. If you are an arrogant prick, you're going to do the thing I was talking about. You're going to pull rank, and you're going to start throwing your weight around to get your way on most topics that you have some emotional investment on. As I was saying in my little story here, I could have thrown around my weight and gotten that arbitrary philosophical thing that I wanted through to the developers. But what would I gain? I would just cause a situation where I sort of start getting this image of being this sort of arrogant prick or something like that. I would cause friction for very little gain. But when I, on the other hand, see the same software developer create a really shitty abstraction or like create a super advanced, and this is the same guy, where he doesn't really know how to solve this problem in an efficient way, and he actually is going to cause a lot of bugs or issues for the project. That's a fight that I have to win. But in order for me to do that, and this is the trick I argue, in order for me to do that in an efficient way, I have to have a pretty decent idea of how to solve it in a better way. And this is, I think, the fine balance between, this is what I argue is the difference between being a manager and being a real leader. If you're a manager, all you can do is complain about the results, and that's not going to get you much. It's actually going to, in many cases, just hurt your relationship because you don't really know how to solve it yourself. But if you're going to lead people, you're going to have to try to show them a different way of doing things, because that's what leadership at large is. If you want your software developers to sort of not just hate your guts, you have to show them that you can walk the walk with them. And so when I have a software developer, like someone who might not be like, they don't know how to write a test, or like they create like a super advanced solution or something that's very complicated, then I will tell them that, yeah, I don't think that this is the right way. Here is why. And then I go into an explanation and I try to explain to them why maybe this is a risky move, or this is not really in line with what we're trying to achieve. And then I present to them alternatives how to solve that problem. So I don't want to create a fight from it. The only time it becomes a fight is if I can't get, I can be wrong about this as well, of course, but you try to approach the problem from a more how do I put this? You try to approach the problem by addressing the issues with the solution, if that makes sense. It's not like a fight between you and this person about some, it's not a dick measuring contest on who's going to be right. It's a question of how do we design this system objectively as much as possible in the simplest, most efficient way. That is usually not a very difficult fight to have with people. The only time you usually have that fight with someone is if they're too idealistic, or as I said, like they might be with this guy we're working with, where like this individual simply doesn't know how to solve this better, or thinks that they know a better way, but actually they're not that experienced, etc., etc. You might have to take a fight in those sorts of situations, but I've come to realize that usually it's always a question of, can I make you see the rationality in what I argue for from my perspective, and do you agree, yes or no? And when I got into that point now where I don't try to fight a fight where I don't just like immediately know that this person, I don't fight a fight where I can't take charge of the situation. If I'm dealing with someone who doesn't want to listen or doesn't want to see the point that I'm making, and I have no authority, I have no way of my role doesn't really mean that I am at the end of the day the person making the decision, then I don't have the fight. Then I basically present my viewpoint and I kick it up a level to whoever can make that decision, and then I let the company decide who is in the right here. Because the problem with trying to win these sorts of fights and trying to get your way at all times is that even if you are right, you're still going to cause a lot of friction and problems between you and the different people working within the organization, and that's a danger to you. And at the end of the day, you're basically just doing that to get your way and building a system that you want, that as soon as you leave it, someone else is going to take over and fuck up for you anyway. Your perfect vision is at best a bit of temporary design within the life cycle of this code. So usually, in my opinion at the very least, it's not so useful for you to fight with people over it, because you're basically just trying to, it's sort of like, kids playing King of the Hill. You get to stand on that hill for 2 seconds, and then it's time to go back for lunch, and then the whole game starts over with other people, and someone else is going to go and stand on the hill when you go away, because you're not a constant in the life cycle of this code. So what I want you to take away from this is that yes, you should pick your fights, but usually I argue for that instead of fighting with people, just do the thing that I've been starting to do, which is that if it doesn't matter, make a democratic, like vote on it if it doesn't have like some very big impact. If it's something that is going to that you see is going to have a fairly severe effect, like some people don't want to write tests, as an example, or that someone picks an architecture that's going to work really poorly, then you discuss it with them, you present your arguments, and if you are the tech lead and you have the authority or so forth, you try to reach the consensus first and foremost. If you can't, you basically just say, all right, but I would say that we do it this way because we can't reach a consensus. And if you're in a situation where it's just you against someone else and you don't really have any authority, kick it up, as I was saying, kick it up to somebody else and just sort of leave the situation. Because getting angry and like starting throwing a fit over not getting your way and so forth, it usually doesn't help much. Because at the end of the day, if the company wants to empower someone who is really shit at something, or like has bad ideas and so forth, and they never listen to you, that's their choice. If they want to bankrupt their company, let them. I've been here many times, guys. You can be right. You can fight the good fight for what is correct and what actually does make the difference. And you can still be labeled. People can basically hate you for helping them making a better system. Even when you're objectively right, which is sometimes very difficult to determine if you are, they're going to hate you for helping them. You might get fired, or like you're going to leave, and they're still going to do whatever they want. You can't force people to make the right decisions. You can just help guide them. That's all I'm going to say. Have a great day.